back here again for episode 10. 10 episodes, making it strong. A small achievement. Shouldn't celebrate too much, but it does feel good to get 10 episodes in and stick through with something. And obviously, not much going on in the world of football. So me and Voss are here today just to touch up on some more OTAs, hypotheticals, and divisions. But first, Voss, how we doing today on this wonderful foggy Thursday?
Doing pretty well. Still fighting off a chest cold. The air quality doesn't help. My son's end of year picnic was rescheduled to his classroom today because of the air quality. But safety first, I suppose. Yeah, kind of headed towards dog days. We have minicamp next week, so that should give us some intel, some tea leaves to read. Not a whole lot going on out at OTAs this week. It's usually the least attended of the three, the voluntaries. Did enjoy some of the sound bites from Dr. Rush, Chuck Smith, talking about Ojabo and Owe and Bowser and Robinson. Also thought it was pretty interesting to see the little switcheroo cross training they did there with Falele getting some reps at left guard and Cleveland at right tackle. Any thought on that development?
Personally, I'm not a fan of it. I mean, I know they have every lineman be able to play some spot in a pinch type of mindset, but to me, that's like you're trying to figure out if they can play there, and then you're kind of like you got to rework some of their footwork and their mindset of how they attack rushers. So I'm not really. I mean, whatever. It's OTAs. It's not like they're in pads doing it, but I just think that keep right guards at right guard and keep centers at center and keep left tackles at left tackle type of guy. I'm not a fan of the move around and see if someone can do this at a pinch spot.
Yeah, especially if you have McCary. That's why you pay him all that money, right? To be able to fill in and make a one-for-one swap really anywhere. I don't think Cleveland necessarily has the feet for tackle. I'm not sure that Falele does or not, but it's worth exploring that. So I definitely don't want to see a full-time move to the interior. I do think if you're looking at this offense and where the pressure points and where the season could kind of get off the rails a little bit, offensive tackle is still an area where they're not completely solid with Ronnie. He has a tendency to give up ground while still maintaining his mirror, which I think can lead to some of these injuries he's had. Maybe not necessarily the ankle, well, definitely the big one, but some of the other nagging ones he had. And Morgan Moses getting a little bit older. So I'm hoping that Falele can kind of take a jump this summer and become, a long-term swing tackle, developing into a starter, maybe as soon as a year or two after that. So I'd like to see him stay at tackle, but we'll see what happens once he put the pads on.
Right. Yeah. I do think he can be a long-term future at right tackle, a long-term starter. I think that's in the cards. That's not me being over homerism because he's a Raven and we took him and all that. I do think he has the ability to get up into people's chests before they kind of take advantage of him being a little bit slower. So I do think he will, hopefully, like you said, make a jump over the summer and look at maybe letting go of Morgan Moses next offseason to create some cap space and let Falele start full time.
The other big news was Hunter, right? Or I guess not news, but the big topic that has the Ravens flock ablaze, abuzz, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, well, there's two Vikings technically, but the first one we'll get out of the way really quickly. Dalvin Cook, no. Voss.
One of the best Florida State running backs to enter the NFL in a while. One of my favorite players in college, and just another example why it's never a good idea to pay a running back big money, second contract.
Yeah, but I think currently everyone thinks that the NFL running backs are like homeless people in the street with their like cup out. Everyone's like justice for the running backs. It's just getting out of hand with that stuff. They're
Well,
getting paid billions of dollars. They're fine.
We touched on it last week. You hit the genetic lottery to make it to the NFL. You hit the 98th percentile. I don't have a lot of sympathy that you didn't hit the 99th percentile to be a size and shape that's not replaceable. It is what it is, So I really hope the Ravens don't take the bait on J.K. Dobbins. You can't just keep paying devalued positions and expect to fill in the gaps at the premium positions. That's the opposite way any team should build a roster.
Yeah. I think we'll get into it later in the offseason when we have some downtime. But I do have a little bit of I don't want to say fixed take, but I do have a take on roster building. I may have made a small shift in my philosophy, but we'll touch on that later in the offseason. No need to hash it out now.
Look forward to it.
And then obviously, Danielle Hunter, and of course we've went back and forth in the chat of ours about acquiring him. And in my opinion, I think he's worth the assets required to give up for him. I think if it's a second and a fifth, or a third and a fifth, or just 2/3, I still think he is. He's not how do I say this? He's not like a top 5 edge rusher, but he's in my opinion, on the cusp of like the 12 to 16 range or so. And I think one thing that he has that we currently don't have is sack reduction. I think that's something that's been pretty prevalent in his career. And, when we talk about can we fit him on the roster, and is the roster built to have someone like Danielle Hunter? The roster wasn't built to have someone like Roquan Smith. The roster was built to skimp at linebacker, but we did that anyway. And in my opinion, the Ravens are the most all-in they've been in a decade, at least, maybe ever. I mean, like they have $20 million of void years counting against their cap next year, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, I think that move puts us over the top, in my opinion. So, I would make the move, and you have a little bit of insurance on the contract in case he's a depreciating asset, whatever, and you have Owe still for another 2 years.
So I'll take the opposite stance on Danielle Hunter. Seth Walder's win rate chart that Dan, our buddy Dan Rees, provided to the group chat there. He was right next to Odafe Owe last year as far as percentage of double teams. There we go, G. And win rate. He's he was in the bottom left quadrant where Myles Garrett and the Bosas and the Watts and those really elite guys are in the top right quadrant. So it's kind of the opposite of where you want to be. I'm always skeptical of pass rushers coming from another team and trying to fit into this scheme. That was kind of a big topic that we were talking about. They ask a lot of their outside backers, and we've seen Judon, Za'Darius leave Baltimore and put up sack production. We've seen Ngakoue come to Baltimore and have his production cut in half, decimated. So I know Hunter, put up 10 sacks last year. I don't necessarily think he would put up 10 sacks here. The bigger thing to me is, and I hear you on Roquan, and again, it comes back to this point that we continually make. The goal is not just to get good players; it's to get good players in the right places at the right fit. Because you say right player, right price. For Beckham, he said right player, right fit. I like that, right fit. And I don't think he's a right fit because you already have Bowser, Owe, and Ojabo. And really what you need is a cheaper vet that you don't need a cornerstone player. You're hoping that one or two of those guys continue to be cornerstone players. both first-round talents. We've talked about before adding competition to certain position groups. That applies to me more when it's day 3 picks, where you're penciling on a day 3 pick, a day 3 talent to be a starter. These are both first-round talents. I really think Justin Houston is the ideal guy to round out this group. He's happy to be a designated pass rusher. He doesn't want to have a cornerstone role. He doesn't want a 70% snap share. He's not chasing another big contract after this one. So really, you have your steady, versatile vet in Bowser. You have your 2 young guns, and then you really just want a savvy vet to round out the group. So that's the way I would do it. I don't want to block away an Ojabo. I want somebody that complements them. I want a player that will allow McDonald to go to a race car, NASCAR personnel, with 3 or even 4 outside backers on the field at once. But I think you can accomplish all that with Justin Houston for a much lesser cost. I know their contracts will probably end up pretty similar, but Hunter's going to be one extension. So that's where I stand on that. I wouldn't be against the move, but I don't think he would put them over the top. I really don't. I think a combination of Justin Houston and Marcus Peters for the same cap hit would put them over the top.
I mean, I just think that I have probably a higher view on him, and use the word hope. You hope that Odafe and Ojabo can get better, but I don't think you can win Super Bowls off of hope, in my opinion. I think that obviously we're very different on the player, which is why we're having this disagreement in the first place. But I do think that he will put us over the top if we did acquire him. I think it's a good move for the short term and the long term, in my opinion. I don't think he's regressing in any sort of way. I mean, he had a lot of one-on-ones because Za'Darius was getting double teamed. So
of course,
I just think that overall, does he make the Ravens roster better? Is it also a position of need? Yes, but you probably are kind of bailing on someone like always of development. You probably are saying, yeah, we're not going to wait for you to develop. We're just going to go get this guy now, and in the offseason we can accommodate you if you want to be traded. I think that I do understand that argument, but I think that the Ravens do have one more lever in terms of a aggressive move that they can make between now and the trade deadline, and preferably it's at cornerback or edge. I think getting, like you say a lot of the times, Voss, getting the position right is a big step. The other step is not overpaying. So I think that's it for me.
No, I agree with you that there's definitely another lever that needs to be pulled. I definitely think it needs to address the pass defense. I'm just not quite convinced that the double whammy of trading the picks and then paying the guy, it costs a lot. We saw that with Roquan, So if you can do that without trading picks and get Justin Houston, who is 90%. I mean, he had 9.5 sacks. I think he had 18 pressures. Hunter had 10 sacks and 22 pressures. And Houston had a lot less snaps. So if you can get the same production cheaper, I'm always a fan of that. So, but anyway, we'll see what happens. There's still a couple more guys out there. A couple guys started latching on this week. Floyd and who was the other one that signed today?
Frank Clark.
Clark. So you still have Clowney and Ingram, right? Melvin Ingram's still available.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as long as you get one of them, I'm probably pretty satisfied. I don't think they need a frontline starting caliber. I think more of a complimentary guy would be, just the way to kind of have the best of both worlds.
Right. Yeah. The only thing is for me is I don't want to get in this thing where only one of Ojabo and Owe are developed, and our defensive line really isn't getting home. And now we have to go scheme pressure and send a lot of blitzes, and then now we have to play a certain type of coverage to account for those blitzes and not leave weak spots. I'm not a fan of that. I like running straight up coverage. That's kind of what San Fran has been doing for a while. It's what made their defense so great is they have the front four that can get home and they can just play a lot more normalized, non-blitzed and rolled and all that stuff. So that's my preference. That's why I think if not Hunter, then somebody along the D line that can get pressure. I think that will do a lot for this team.
Completely agree on the need for pressure from the D line. And as the offseason progresses, my concern about the pass defense has not subsided. I mean, you got PFF putting the rankings out, and we'll dovetail into this quickly before we do get into the AFC North. But they have Hamilton as a 13th best safety, but he was playing nickel, so he wasn't really even playing safety. And I do have concerns about how he's going to fare on the back end. I really do. I know some people get hyped and they want to read the press clippings and drink the Kool-Aid, but I do think his long speed and range could be potentially a little bit of an issue. They had Williams all the way down to 24, Marcus Williams, which I think is low for him, maybe because he missed some time. Then at corner, you have Marlowe as a 20th best corner, and that's your only corner. I mean, in previous years, I've been following this, reporting and publishing articles and stuff, and they had Marlowe and Marcus Peters, both in the top 15 for the last several years. And now you have one corner in the top 20, two safeties, which some people say is the best safety tandem in the league. I don't know. That remains to be seen. You have 0 pass rushers, 0 edges in their top 32, and 0 D linemen in their top 32. Notably, Calais Campbell did make their top 32, but he's playing for the Falcons now. So you add that all together, and I do think I am concerned that they overinvested in middle of the field defenders, and there is going to be a weakness playing certain teams, specifically the team that's won the division the last 2 years in a row, the Cincinnati Bengals, who are currently plus 500 to win the AFC, the third best odds, and plus 120 to win the AFC North. 11.5 is their win total. Their odds to win the AFC North is twice as good as Baltimore's, as the Ravens in Vegas's eyes, and that's the exact team that gives me concern. So you want to jump into breaking down this AFC North a little bit?
Yeah. Why don't we? Well, yeah, we'll touch on the Bengals. I think that this offseason they really did go premium position heavy. They went tackle. They spent $60 million on Orlando Brown, and then they followed that up with their draft. Their draft was edge, corner, and then a few other their major picks, at least in the draft, were edge, corner, and then they picked the safety as well. So
running back, yeah. Chase Brown, I think his name is. People are excited about him.
Yeah. So looking at it, I still think their defense or their offensive line is a weakness. I'm not sold on that at all. And questions about Mixon getting suspended. It seems like those went away. Burrow is still a good quarterback. He's still a top 6, top 7 quarterback, in my opinion. Top 5, wherever you want to put him. I don't care. He's a good quarterback. And then obviously they have the big 3 at wide receiver, which seems like they're all still playing at a high level. So some questions about tight end, though. I mean, Irv Smith seems like they really haven't had that presence there at tight end in a while. Boss, do you have any points on them offensively or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key to their entire team is their passing offense and their weaponry with Burrow, the quick processor that he is. Excuse me, doesn't have a tremendous arm, but very accurate. And then Chase, who I think really is trying to break out in his third year. In fact, I think he may. If you're looking at early fantasy football drafts, with Cook no longer on the Vikings, I think Chase has a chance to finish above Jefferson, his former teammate. Higgins is another wide receiver 1. I mean, he's a $23, $25 million player. We'll see if they end up keeping him, but they should keep him this year. I do think their offensive line is better with getting former Raven Zeus Orlando Brown Jr. I thought they got a pretty good value on him. I think that wasn't too far off of what the Ravens offered him to play right tackle 3 years ago, because he ended up not getting quite as much as he wanted. Whatever, their cap situation is not our concern necessarily. In the interior, they're not great. Volston, Karras, and Kappa, they're just mediocre guys. But I think if you protect Burrow's blind side, on the right side, they're going to hypothetically kick Jonah Williams to the right side to compete with Collins. And I may be mistaken, but I think they picked up Cody Ford as well to also make it a 3-man competition there. So I don't think their offensive line is, a top 5 unit, but I think in their offense with Burrow and these receivers that force defenses to play them differently, I think they're going to have an elite offense this year for sure.
Definitely. Like you said, what drives that team is the pass offense and the 3 receivers they have. And then obviously on the defense, you have Hendrickson, Reeder, Myles Murphy they just drafted, who I wasn't really a fan of because I felt like I don't like prospects that have tape fall off in the year they come out. And you're basically using previous years to project how good they are unless they were injured that year. And to my knowledge, I don't think Myles Murphy was injured. So wasn't a greatest fan of that pick, but he was the back end of the first round. So not really, you got to do some trait projection there at the back end of the first round. So their front sevens really is good. I would say it almost could be better than the Ravens if we're talking about a comparison standpoint. There are 4 deep at edge currently with Hubbard, Hendrickson, Myles Murphy, Osai, who they picked in the second round previously, and then they also have Cam Sample, who they picked in the third round, which is someone I really liked back in that draft. And then you have Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt. So all in all, their front 7 really is solid. It's probably what carries that defense now. That their secondary is a little more rookie heavy. Voss, any thoughts on the front 7 of Cincinnati?
Yeah, I think they have a nice front 7. I think the DJ Reeder, Trey Henderson combination gives them a potent pass rush combination. I think nowadays you want to have one interior penetrator to go along with your edge rusher. Anarumo is fantastic DC. I mean, 2 years ago, he took a team that signed a bunch of mid-level, essentially veterans, second contract veterans, and transformed them into a team that went all the way to the Super Bowl. And then obviously last year they were pretty close to making it there. I do think that their secondary is in line for progression again. It did regress last year. Awuzie in particular took a step back, which I was kind of expecting. But now that you're losing Jesse Bates and Von Bell at safety, they did draft Daxton Hill, Justice Hill's brother, 2 years ago as a successor to Bates. But Bates is one of the top 5 safeties in the game. So I do think they're going to allow more points than they have. So really what it comes down to me is when I look at the Ravens against the Bengals and how do they match up, I think the Ravens passing offense matches up pretty good against the Bengals pass defense. And I think the Bengals passing offense matches up really good against the Ravens pass defense. I will make one more point. A lot of people want to point to the playoff game where the Ravens played Burrow tough. They certainly did. They played him tough all 3 games. Stephen Ruiz put out a good article in the Ringer this week that details some of the deceptive coverages and deceptive blitzes that McDonald sprung on Burrow and really gave him a harder time than anybody. But the Bengals were down 3 offensive linemen in that game. So you can't take too much away from that. Really what it comes down to is I think these two teams are going to be getting in some shootouts this year because that's where the strength of the personnel lies on both teams. So, the Ravens had to open up the playbook. John Harbaugh can't be so run heavy. There's another article Jonas Schaffer put out last week, I think, about how Harbaugh over a 12-year period is more run heavy than the league. That's not a Greg Roman thing. That's not a Lamar Jackson thing. That's a John Harbaugh thing. So, it should be fun. I think, you're going to have to put some points on the board. These are games are going to be in the high 30s, in the 40s, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. The John Harbaugh-led offense should not be passing on first and second down in those games. I think that the goal should be passing the football a lot on early downs and building a lead as much as you can. And then going into dime defense where we hopefully have some reinforcements there in the pass defense. But even then, sometimes in football, a team is so good that, it doesn't matter who you have back there. And it's kind of how the Bengals passing offense is. They really can score however, whenever, yards after the catch, jump ball. It's hard. It is hard to cover them, but hopefully the Ravens do put enough talent out there to at least try. Voss, any last thoughts here on the Bengals?
Cordarius Johnson here as a comment. There we go. Every time we play Burrow, people find an excuse to play them. Okay, the down 3 offensive line. Maybe the Ravens have played them tough. I agree with that, but the Ravens also are losing 4 to 5 starters off that defense last year. So I'm just, I don't think it's going to be hubris just to project that the Ravens defense of yesteryear is going to be on the field this year when they don't have the same quality of personnel. Full stop.
Definitely. Yep. I mean, we've hit it on every episode that the pass defense is going to be in for regression.
Anyway, you want to go on to Cleveland?
No. Save the best for last. Let's go on Pittsburgh.
Okay. Well, let me give you the odds first.
Yeah.
They're plus 3,500 to win the AFC, 12th best in the league. So, they're one of the bottom teams. Plus 600 to win the AFC North. I use Caesars. It's because I feel like some of the FanDuel and DraftKings and all that stuff gets a little wonky. So stick with the tried and true Caesars Sportsbook. But that's how Vegas sees them. How do you see them?
You don't want to count out a Mike Tomlin-led team. He's never had a losing season in his career. I thought it was going to be last year when they started out really, really bad. I really do like Kenny Pickett. Like, I think he's a gamer. I don't think he's ever going to be a top 10 quarterback, but I think he can hover around the 17, 18 range at quarterback. But outside of that, I just don't. I think it's a very old team as well. There's a lot of their star playmakers like Hayward, and a few others it's just there's John Harbaugh, but a different team and a little more culture and a little more aggressive players like Pickens and such. So I think 8-8 or 8-9, 9-8. They'll probably 9-8 on the outside looking in when the season's all said and done with. But I'm not counting them out or anything. I think 10 wins would be their ceiling if I had to pick. But I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I think that's about right. As I look at their roster and break it down, I mean, they have a very good pass rush. Hayward's still playing at a very high level. Watt's coming back, and Highsmith took a huge jump last year. Probably maybe the breakout player of the whole division last year. He's become, a top 20, top 15 edge rusher. So I think they're pretty good there. They're smart to go cheap at linebacker with Holcomb and Roberts. They added Pat Pete to their secondary and Ahkello Witherspoon and Joey Porter Jr. and my guy Corey Trice, if you remember in our preview show. I liked him. So they have remade their cornerback core pretty good. And I think their safety tandem is arguably better than the Ravens with Minka and Damontae Kazee. So what Pittsburgh has done in the past is really given Lamar a ton of trouble, where they bring their safeties down, they bring Minka down, they bracket Andrews, they load the box, and Greg Roman didn't have any answers for that. He just didn't. A lot of Lamar's worst games in his professional career have come against Pittsburgh. I'm pretty optimistic that Todd Monken is going to have answers for that. And a lot of those answers are going to be because the Ravens have good wide receivers, an above average, or at least not bottom 5 wide receiver core anymore. So that's how I see it on that side of the ball. The offense, well, give me your thoughts on the Steelers' offense.
Their offensive line is very replaceable. I feel all across the spots. I don't think there's anyone on that line where, unless I'm missing someone, that I'm like, wow, okay, that guy's like a top 10 guy, a top 5. I don't think they have anyone like that across their line. I think it's a lot of very serviceable guys. And they also still have their same coordinator, Matt Canada, who sucks. He's really bad, and they retained him. And I think with Pickett, the way you can kind of get away with him and his faults, excuse me, are is ball out quick offense, and I just don't. I didn't see it last year. Najee, I'm probably after the contract is up, he won't get extended there. I'm not too impressed with him. But receiving wise, I think I like Freiermuth. He's won me a lot of parlays last year on some anytime touchdown scores. So I can't hate on that. Obviously Pickens, someone I wish the Ravens grabbed last season in the draft. I think Deontay Johnson is a solid receiver. I think he's a very high end number 2. And then they also have
they added Allen Robinson.
Allen Robinson. Yes.
Yeah.
So overall, it's a very mid level offense. I'm like the 18th best offense in the NFL, maybe.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think their offensive line really was what's holding the offense back. They did draft Broderick Jones in the first round, who potentially projects to be their best lineman. Najee, as far as I'm concerned, is irrelevant. The blocking, he gets what's blocked for him, nothing more, nothing less. And I'm glad that they took a pick on the first round running back. So they have plenty of weapons. I mean, I think Pickens is in store for a breakout year. Freiermuth's solid. AR-15 might be able to, have a little resurgence, maybe as a big slot option, depending on what they want to do with Johnson. It really comes down to Pickett. Can he take a step? Can he take a step into that upper echelon of quarterbacks? I have my doubts, but he did play really well down the stretch last year, the last month or so of the season. Pittsburgh made a little run, and he was a big part of that. So, all in all, I think they're going to be a tough team to play. They're going to play the Ravens hard. They might get one game from the Ravens. The Ravens probably should hypothetically sweep them. But I'm kind of happy to see that Pittsburgh is trying to do this halfway rebuild, halfway retool at the same time. I think that's a recipe for a prolonged period of mediocrity from them, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, definitely. I by no means am I afraid of them in any sense. I really do think Pickett is a gamer, and I think he does. I think he had a 4 fourth quarter comebacks last year, if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4. So he whatever you find worth in the crunch that a quarterback can come back and play like that, whatever weight you put into it. But I do tend to put a little bit of weight into that. Voss, any last thoughts here on the Squealers?
I mean, they're just a smash mouth team, right? So like where the Ravens match up with the Bengals, well, you build to beat the Bengals. That leaves you, a little bit short against the Steelers or something like that. It's an ebb and flow. To me, I would rather build to beat the teams that are making deep postseason runs like the Chiefs and the Bengals versus building to beat the Steelers. If the Steelers run the ball down your throat in week 15 and you lose a tough game, so what? I'd rather be equipped to beat those, to win a shootout. So that's where my head's at with the Steelers. I'm not too scared of them. I think they're getting a little bit overhyped. Tomlin's a hell of a coach, maybe a better coach than Harbaugh at this point, but they just don't have the horses yet.
Yeah. Browns, boss. I'm gonna
Browns.
This is my dark horse team in the AFC North.
Well, you know what? I agree with you because they are plus 1,800 to win the AFC, which is the 8th best odds. They are plus 375 to win the AFC North, which I think is I think Vegas is undervaluing them. I really do.
Definitely. Just speaking of their offseason, they signed Dalvin Tomlinson, who's a really, really big help for the run defense over there. He's also a really good pocket pusher as well, can demand double teams. They add Zadarius Smith, also from the Vikings defense. another player that commands double teams. They already have Myles Garrett, who's another guy who commands double teams. And then they draft Siaki Ika from Baylor, another large, powerful guy that demands double teams. So you have 4 guys in that front, in my opinion, that are going to command somebody. You're going to have to double team at least 2 of them. You're going to have to. Otherwise, you're going to leave Myles Garrett 1-on-1, Za'Darius Smith 1-on-1, one of the guys in the interior 1-on-1, and it's going to be a mess, in my opinion. I really do think that they shored up that run defense that was really struggling for them in a while, and they also bolstered the pass defense as well by adding Za'Darius and Dalvin. I do think Dalvin can add some pass defense ability. Voss, any thoughts on those?
Yeah, so the big change for Cleveland was changing defensive coordinator. They got Schwartz. Schwartz is a local guy. He's from Arbutus, Maryland. I think their defense was awful last year, and it was expected to be one of the better defenses in the league. And I think Schwartz has a good chance to turn it around. I mean, you get Garrett in like a wide 9 stance, which he's never done, at least to my knowledge, very much at the pro level. He can really feast. I mean, he might be the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. Again, you add ZDS, so you have a complimentary guy. And they have a very talented secondary. If you look at, the pedigrees of these guys, Denzel Ward, first-round pick, high-paid player. Greg Newsome, first-round pick. Martin Emerson, I believe, was a second-round pick, who I liked a lot. Juan Thornhill, another second-round pick who they added from the Chiefs. JOK and Anthony Walker, 2 rangy linebackers in the middle. I think their defense has the potential to be one of the better groups in the conference if they can kind of get Denzel Ward playing a little bit better. And but I think they're going to be a much more aggressive defense under Schwartz than they were previously.
Yeah, no, I agree. I really do like their secondary. I think it's one of the more talented ones in the league. Don't forget Grant Telpett as well back there. Another LSU safety that, in my opinion, is in prime for a breakout. Had a little bit of some injuries going on early in his career, but I do think he could pop off this year. I wouldn't be surprised.
Big fan of Delpit, definitely.
Yeah. Overall, just grading their offseason, I would say it's hard to put the weight of signing players and then signing players that affect something else. Like the fact that we signed Odell, which kind of got Lamar to agree to an extension, that's like pretty heavy as weight goes. But in terms of acquiring players, I think the Browns had the best offseason out of everyone. And I know every offseason people say, oh, they're paper champs and they're just the Browns and this blah, 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 blah. They are a 75% Deshaun Watson away from probably really taking this division over, at least for the year. Maybe not for a long time because that fully guaranteed contract is hitting their books hard soon. But they add Elijah Moore on the offense. They add Cedric Tillman. They still have Amari Cooper. I think those are 3 really good, diverse skill sets. You got a route runner, you got a speed slot guy, and you got your X. And, of course, one's a rookie. But you pair that with a wide zone running game, a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, and an offensive line that can block really well. And let's not forget David Njoku, who in my opinion is going to be primed for a breakout. I think their offense may not be number 1 in the league, but 9th, 8th, I wouldn't be surprised if Deshaun Watson does make the step.
Yeah, not to mention Cleveland did all this with no draft picks until around the 100 range. I think they had a tremendous offseason. I definitely agree with you there. They seem to like at least my kind of players, maybe probably your kind of players too. I was huge on Elijah Moore coming out. If Elijah Moore and Zay Flowers were in the same draft class, I think I probably would have preferred Elijah Moore. Donovan Peoples-Jones is another, burner on the outside who, played pretty well last year. I definitely agree with you that Njoku by the end of the season will be considered, a top 6 or so tight end. He was really playing well down the stretch last year. The offensive line, I think they definitely have the best interior O-line in the league. The tackles are regressing a little bit. Neither Wills nor Conklin had good years last year. But you have Bitonio, Posick, and Wyatt Teller on the inside. It helps. And Nick Chubb, I will mention him. He's one of the best running backs in the league. I don't think he moves the needle very much. No running back does, but he's worth mentioning at least. Again, it comes down to Watson. Can he be the Deshaun Watson of 2018, or has that ship sailed? I like the talent. I like the talent of the player. Plus 375 to win the North. I think that's a pretty good sleeper pick. All in all, it's a tough division. It's if not the number one toughest division, it's got to be top 2 in the league. So you got 3, at least in my view, I think there are 3 legitimate contenders, postseason contenders, between the Bengals, the Ravens, and the Browns. And Pittsburgh's a legitimate, solid, 500 type of team.
Yeah. It's not. You don't have any weak team in this.
Texans.
The Texans. You don't have the Cardinals. You don't have some pushover you can get 2 wins on. I think every team in this division is gonna really give you the best both games they play you, and you're probably gonna lose to at least almost lose to each one of them once if you're on an average season.
If you merge the AFC South and the AFC North and kind of try to recreate the old AFC Central, I think there's a decent chance that the Bengals, Browns, Ravens, and Steelers would all finish ahead of Indy, Houston, Jacksonville, and Tennessee. I really do think that there's a decent chance that all 4 of the teams in our division are better than all 4 in their division.
Definitely. I agree with that. Any last thoughts here, Voss, on the whole division is?
No, I think it's going to be, it's going to be tough. The AFC North is always a tough one. I think the schedule, works out pretty well for the Ravens. There's no real, maybe the Ravens have a little bit of an advantage with the schedule. All the teams, maybe not Pittsburgh, they might be a half a notch below, but the other 2 teams I think are pretty much evenly matched, and probably coaching and scheme and play calling and execution, obviously. But I think the coaches are probably what's going to separate the top 3.
Definitely agree with that. And it's hard to see the team that's won the division the past few years, the Bengals, and just be like, yeah, we're going to overtake them when they really have been on point going down the stretch. So I think it's going to be a tough year. But thankfully the Ravens have at least solidified the most important phase in football, which is the pass offense.
Yes.
Now I think obviously with the remainder of the offseason and the trade deadline, it needs to reinforce the pass defense, the second most important phase in football, in my opinion.
Completely agree. Those are the 2 most important phases. I say rushing offense is 3rd, special teams is 4th, and run defense is 5th. That would be how I'd rank them. But I am optimistic that Todd Monken is going to be the man that's going to give the Ravens a little bit of an edge in some of these games, because too many times, we just saw Pittsburgh and Cincy just bracket Andrews, load the box, pin Lamar in, and then they just had no answers, and they finally have that. So I do think that as we break down this and we're looking at it, and as you mentioned, the Ravens are more all in than they've been since 2012 at least, and they're still kind of in a 3-man race for their own division. Not to mention, they're only they're plus 1,200 to win the AFC right now as we speak, and you're already all in. To me, that's a reason to go more all in. To me, that's a reason to say, there's no such thing as halfway all in. You're just spinning your wheels, and it's just foolish to say, all right, we're gonna do all these void years, and but now we're gonna stop, and now we're gonna make it work with unproven pass rushers and and no starting caliber fifth defensive back. That's not smart to me. That's illogical to me. So hope DeCosta keeps making it work, and maybe we do this again. Training camp wise, just touch on it briefly, and the Ravens have added a couple more pass defenders, and they are, a half a tick above the Bengals and the Browns at that point.
Definitely. Hope so. Hope they add some between now and training camp. If they don't, I am worried about their pass defense if someone goes down. But with that, boss, I think we'll go ahead and get out of here. Appreciate everybody for joining, commenting. This every Thursday around 8:30 o'clock, 8:39 Eastern time. We would try and make it here every Thursday. Boss, any last words?
I want to stack the AFC sometime in the next couple of weeks. I guess we can do mini camp next week, but because I like to hear your thoughts on Buffalo, KC, Miami, who I think is being slept on a little bit, the Chargers. But I also really want to dig into some of these coaches because I think Monken and Chuck Smith and the new wide receivers coach, Greg, as I'm sitting here and we're kind of getting the dog days and what's going to be different, I think this might be Harbaugh's best coaching staff that he's assembled. It might be the Ravens' best coaching staff since those early Billick coaching staffs that had, 5 or 6 future head coaches on them. And that's an edge, because people don't really get into that too much. There's so much data and information on players and where they're drafted and what is their RAS and what is their PFF grade. But coaching doesn't have any type of that analysis. But I do think that might be the Ravens' edge. And I'm really happy that John Harbaugh probably modified his ways a little bit and kind of feels that like DeCosta kind of twisted Harbaugh's arm a little bit this offseason, and I think that was a good move.
Definitely agree with that. I would also agree with it. This is probably the best coaching staff we've had since the days of having Chuck Pagano, Marvin Lewis, and another head coach all on the same staff.
Del Rio, Rex. I mean, they were all on the entire every single defensive position coach except for maybe one became a head coach. I think from that team.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But with that, we'll go ahead and get out of here. Everybody have a good night, good weekend, and I will start saying this as a tradition. Tell a family member or a loved one that you love them. Have a good night.